Camping wasn't something I'd normally choose to do as a social worker. My days were often spent solving other people's problems, and my idea of a good time was a warm bath and an audiobook. But Lisa, my best friend since college, had convinced me that a weekend in the woods near Asheville would be good for the soul. She'd pitched it as a peaceful escape from our phones, emails, and people begrudgingly, I agreed. The drive to the forest was really pretty. Spring had painted the mountains in different shades of green. The curvy roads were covered with wildflowers. Lisa was really happy, singing along to a music list she'd made just for the trip. By the time we found a spot to put up our tent, even I was starting to think the outdoors might be nice. Our camping spot was in a hidden clearing. It was surrounded by tall, beautiful trees. A small creek made bubbling sounds nearby. The air smelled rich with pine trees and wet dirt. We put up the tent and gathered some wood for a fire. By sunset, we were sitting around a crackling fire, roasting marshmallows and talking about our lives. Lisa talked about her latest hiking trips. I shared some of the more silly stories from my work. It was the kind of night that made you feel small in the best way, like the world was huge and full of good things. By the time the fire died down, the stars were out everywhere. The forest had become quiet and peaceful. We crawled into our sleeping bags, laughing about how silly we probably looked trying to get around the tent in the dark. I fell asleep to the sound of the creek, feeling surprisingly calm and happy. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night to a sound that didn't belong there. It was almost like wind, but it had a pattern to it. Soft, high sounds that came in bursts. Laughter. It sounded like kids laughing. Did you hear that? I whispered to Lisa, who was already moving around beside me. Hear what? She said sleepily. Laughter. Like kids. Lisa sat up and listened. The sound came again, floating softly through the trees. She made a confused face. Probably just some other people camping, she said, lying back down. Go back to sleep. I tried to follow her advice, but something about the sound felt wrong. It was too far away to be clear, but it had a creepy feeling, like it didn't belong. Here, finally, I got tired enough and fell back asleep. The next time I woke up, the laughter was louder. It wasn't far away anymore. It was closer, much closer. Lisa was awake too, sitting up with a flashlight in her hand. Okay, that's weird, she said. It's like 2 in the morning. What kids are out here laughing at this time? The laughter came again. Now it had what sounded like whispers mixed in. Lisa and I looked at each other. She unzipped the tent and shined her flashlight into the trees. The light cut through the darkness, showing branches and leaves, but no signs of anything moving. Hello, Lisa called out. Her voice echoed, but there was no answer. The laughter stopped suddenly, like someone had turned it off. We sat inside for what felt like forever, trying hard to hear any sign of movement. When nothing happened, Lisa shrugged. Probably just the wind, she said, though she didn't sound like she believed it. We zipped the tent back up and lay down. Neither of us really expected to sleep. An hour later, the laughter started again. This time, it was different. It wasn't just laughter. It was giggling, like someone trying to keep it quiet. And it was right outside the tent. My chest felt tight as Lisa grabbed the flashlight again. Whoever this is, it's not funny, she yelled, unzipping the tent and shining the light outside. The light swept across the clearing, showing nothing. No kids, no shadows, no movement. This doesn't make sense, Lisa said, stepping out of the tent. I grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Are you crazy? We don't know who or what is out there. She stopped for a moment, but agreed, coming back inside. We zipped the tent shut and sat in tense silence. The giggling stopped again. It was replaced by the sound of leaves crunching, like someone or something was walking around the clearing. If this is a prank, it's the most complicated one I've ever seen, Lisa whispered. We spent the rest of the night sitting back to back in the tent, holding tight to the flashlight and a camping knife Lisa had brought just in case. The sounds outside didn't stop. Sometimes it was laughter, other times it was whispers. And once, I promise I heard the faint creak of a swing. But when we looked outside, the clearing was always empty. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. As the first rays of sunlight came through the trees, the noises finally stopped. Lisa and I stepped out of the tent, tired but happy that it was over. That happy feeling disappeared the moment we stepped outside the tent. The first thing we noticed was the strange pattern in front of our campsite. Sticks, leaves, and rocks had been carefully placed into a design on the ground. It was a spiral that got tighter toward the center. At first I thought it was just random stuff scattered by the wind, but the spiral was too perfect. It wasn't natural. Lisa froze beside me, her eyes locked on the pattern. "Did you do that?" she asked, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "No," I said, my throat dry. "Why would I?" "Please tell me this is some kind of joke," Lisa said with a clear shake in her voice. "We're the only ones out here," I replied. I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. The laughter from the night before played in my mind again, as if the forest itself had been making fun of us. We started taking down the tent, working quietly but with rushed, clumsy hands. The smallest noise, leaves moving, or a twig breaking, made me jump. As we packed the last of our stuff into the car, Lisa grabbed my arm. "Look," she said, pointing to the line of trees. At first, I didn't see anything, but then I noticed it. A small bundle tied to one of the branches. It swayed gently in the breeze, wrapped in strips of torn fabric. I stepped closer, my stomach feeling tight. When I was close enough to see the bundle clearly, I stopped cold. It was a doll. It was made roughly, with a head made from knotted cloth and a body stuffed with what looked like dried grass. Its face was painted with two uneven black dots for eyes and a long slanted line for a mouth. The line curved upward, making a crooked, scary smile. Lisa grabbed my arm again. "We need to go now." I didn't argue. We got into the car, locking the doors the moment we were inside. As we pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I thought I saw movement near the tree line, a figure darting between the trees. But when I blinked, it was gone. The drive back to Asheville was silent. Lisa kept gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her together. I stared out the window, looking at the road and the woods beyond it. Even in the daylight, the forest felt heavy and dark. Its shadows were darker than they should have been. When we reached Lisa's apartment, neither of us moved to get out of the car. Finally, she broke the silence. "What do you think that was?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but it wasn't just kids playing. It was something else. I haven't been camping since that night." Lisa and I sometimes bring it up, but only in a nervous, joking way, never for too long. We both like to leave it in the past. The forest is supposed to be a place for a peaceful escape, but that night, it felt like something completely different. Like it belonged to someone or something that didn't want us there. And whoever left that spiral and that doll wanted to send a message, a warning, an invitation. Who knows? All I know is I'm not going back. When I set out on my solo trip to Zion National Park in the spring of 2021, I had no idea it would end up being one of the most scary experiences of my life. I was someone who wanted to make movies, and I was always looking for beautiful, lonely places to film. Zion's amazing canyons, bright desert landscapes, and endless trails seemed like the perfect background for my next project. I had planned a 3-day hike along one of the park's trails that not many people used. I hoped to capture the untouched beauty of the area. I had my gear packed, a lightweight tent, a couple of cameras, a tripod, and enough supplies to last me through the trip. I was excited about being alone, no distractions, just me, my camera, and nature. The first day of the hike went well. The weather was perfect, with just enough clouds to keep the sun from being too hot. I spent hours filming the rocky cliffs and winding paths, stopping a lot to look at the scenery. It was about mid-afternoon when I noticed another hiker ahead of me on the trail. At first, I was happy. It was nice to see another person in such a faraway area. I waved, but the person didn't wave back. He just kept walking, his speed steady and never changing. "Hey," I called, but still no answer. I pushed it out of my mind. Maybe they had headphones in, or they were just lost in their own thoughts. But something about how he stood seemed strange. He wore a wide hat that put his face in shadow. His movements were almost too smooth, like he was marching rather than walking. By the time the sun went down behind the mountains, I was ready to set up camp. I found a spot tucked into a small clearing with a good view of the stars. After putting up my tent and gathering some firewood, I set up my camera on the tripod to take pictures of the night sky over time. I was just about to settle down when I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. The same person was back, standing on the trail about 100 yards away. He was perfectly still, facing my direction. Hello, no answer. I stood there for a moment, waiting for him to move or say something, but he just stood there. Finally, I decided to ignore him. If he wanted to keep his distance, that was his business. The fire crackled as I ate my dinner, but I couldn't help feeling like eyes were on me. Every so often, I looked over my shoulder, expecting to see the figure standing just outside the circle of light. By the time I crawled into my sleeping bag, the worried feeling had settled deep in my chest. I told myself it was just being alone, getting to me. After all, this was what I had wanted, right? Being alone, peace. Falling asleep was harder than I expected. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of snapping branches. My eyes flew open and I lay still, listening at first. It was almost nothing, just the sound of leaves crunching every so often. Then it grew louder, like someone or something was walking around the camp. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent as quietly as I could. I pointed the light into the darkness, but all I could see were trees and shadows. The snapping stopped, and a creepy stillness took its place. "Is someone there?" I called. The shake in my voice gave me away. No answer. I crawled back into the tent, leaving the flashlight close by. My heart was beating hard, but I tried to convince myself it was just an animal, maybe a deer or something smaller. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The next time I heard the noise, it was closer, much closer. I sat up, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. The snapping branches were now joined by soft footsteps, so quiet they were almost impossible to hear. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside, shining the light in all directions. The light caught sudden movement, a shadow darting between the trees. "Who's there?" I shouted, forcing my voice to sound stronger than it was. This time there was an answer. Not words, but a deep, throaty growl that froze me in place. I backed up toward the tent, fighting to keep my panic under control while thinking of a plan. Should I stay put and hope they went away, or should I make a run for it? Somehow, I made it through the night. When the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, I came out of the tent, tired but alive. That's when I saw the footprints. They were scattered around the campsite, large and barefoot, like someone had been pacing all night. Nearby, I found my food bag hanging from a tree, torn open and empty. I packed up my gear as quickly as possible, my hands shaking. As I hiked back to my car, I kept nervously checking behind me, but the trail stayed empty. When I finally reached the parking lot, I practically threw my gear into the car and sped off, happy to be back on the road. Looking back, I can't say for sure what I ran into that night. Maybe it was just another hiker, someone with poor social skills and a strange sense of humor. Or maybe it was something else entirely. The wilderness is beautiful, but it's also unforgiving. And sometimes the scariest thing out there isn't a bear or a mountain lion. It's another person, or whatever pretends to be one. My girlfriend Evelyn and I had been planning this trip for weeks. After months of really hard schedules, her with her nursing shifts, and me drowning in case studies at law school, we needed to get away. We chose a hidden spot in Arkansas, a place Evelyn had visited once as a child, and remembered for being peaceful. It seemed perfect. A stream for swimming, plenty of shade from towering pine trees, and complete separation from the chaos of the city. We arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon in June. The air was filled with the scent of pine needles and wildflowers. As we set up our tent near the stream, I felt my stress melt away. The forest seemed alive with the sound of insects and the leaves in the wind. Evelyn smiled as she unpacked our gear, her excitement spreading to me. "This is going to be amazing," she said, spreading out a picnic blanket. "Just us, nature, and no one to bother us." I agreed, though I couldn't help but notice how quiet it was. There were no other campers, no distant laughter or the crackle of fires, just the two of us. At the time it seemed perfect. As night fell, we cooked hot dogs over the fire, shared stories from our week, and looked at the stars. But as we were getting ready for bed, I heard a faint snap, like a branch breaking in the distance. "Did you hear that?" I asked, pausing mid-dash step. Evelyn shrugged. "Probably an animal. We're in their home, after all." I forced a chuckle, brushing off the worried feeling that crept up my spine. She was right. It was probably just an animal. We climbed into the tent, and within minutes, Evelyn was fast asleep. I lay awake for a while, listening to the light babble of the stream, trying to convince myself that the forest was safe. The next morning, as we drank our coffee by the fire, I noticed something strange. Footprints in the dirt near our campsite. They were larger than Evelyn's and mine, but not by much, and they led toward the stream before disappearing. "Hey baby, do you think these are ours?" I asked, pointing them out. She looked closely at the prints. "I don't think so. Mine are smaller, and yours, ... Well, yours are wider. Maybe it was someone passing through." I nodded, though the thought bothered me. We hadn't seen another person since we arrived. Still, I let it go, not wanting to spoil the day. We spent the afternoon hiking a nearby trail. The forest's canopy gave us shade from the summer sun. Evelyn took pictures of wildflowers, and I filmed clips for a short video. I planned to edit later. When we returned to camp, everything seemed untouched. The footprints faded from my mind until night fell. Around 11 p.m., we were sitting by the fire, roasting ears of corn and laughing about a story Evelyn's co-worker had told her. The woods felt alive, the fire casting dancing shadows against the trees. Then it happened again. A snap, louder this time and much closer. Evelyn froze. What was that? I grabbed the flashlight and shined it into the darkness. The light cut across the trees, showing nothing more than trunks and underbrush. Still, the hair on my arms stood up. It's probably an animal, I said, trying to sound confident. Evelyn nodded, but her eyes stayed on the trees. Let's just get some sleep. We put out the fire and climbed into the tent. This time, I kept the flashlight close by. The next morning, as we packed up to explore another trail, I noticed something that made my stomach feel sick. Near the edge of the campsite, there were more footprints, and they were fresh. Evelyn, come look at this. She joined me, her face pale as she studied the prints. These weren't here yesterday. No, I said, and they weren't made by an animal. The prints led toward the stream again, but stopped suddenly, like whoever made them had turned around and gone back. We decided to cut our hike short and spend the day closer to camp, keeping an eye out for anything unusual. As the day went on, the worried feeling grew. Evelyn became jumpy, reacting to every noise in the woods, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. What once was a calm forest now felt heavy and hard to breathe in. The shadows seemed thicker, and the quiet was almost unbearable. By evening, we decided to pack up and leave the next morning. As we gathered our belongings, I spotted something through the trees, a structure partly hidden by plants. What's that? I asked, pointing. Evelyn turned to see where I was looking. I don't know. Let's check it out. We approached carefully, stepping over roots and thorny plants. The structure was a makeshift shelter built from branches and a tarp. Inside, there were food wrappers, an empty water bottle, and most chilling of all, a pair of binoculars. They've been watching us, Evelyn whispered. My chest felt tight as I looked around the area, expecting someone to jump out at us. The shelter had a clear view of our campsite, like it had been set up specifically to spy on us. We're leaving, I said firmly, grabbing Evelyn's hand. Now. We hurried back to the campsite, throwing our gear into our packs as quickly as possible. The sun was setting, painting the ground with long, dark shadows. As we started down the trail toward the car, the idea that we were being followed ate at me. My heart pounded with every shadow that moved in the corner of my eye. Do you hear that? Evelyn whispered. I listened, trying to hear past the sound of our footsteps, but I heard nothing. We broke into a jog, the weight of our packs pulling at our shoulders. The trail seemed to go on forever. Finally, the car came into view, a safe place in the creeping darkness. We threw our gear into the trunk and jumped in, locking the doors behind us. Let's go, Evelyn said, her voice shaking. I didn't need to be told twice. The tires kicked up gravel as we sped away, leaving the forest and whatever had been stalking us behind. The experience stayed with me long after we returned to the city. I couldn't stop thinking about the shelter, the binoculars, and the footsteps around our campsite. How long had we been watched? And what would have happened if we hadn't left when we did? I still love camping, but I've learned the hard way too. Trust my gut feelings and pay attention to anything unusual. It was supposed to be a fun, carefree weekend with my two best friends, Ryan and Alex. The three of us had been talking about a camping trip for months. In the summer of 2019, we finally decided to make it happen. I had just started my travel video blog, so I was particularly excited about capturing every moment of our adventure. None of us were particularly experienced campers, but we figured that's what made it fun, a chance to unplug and rough it in the great outdoors near Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We arrived at the trailhead on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Our packs were full of brand new gear and snacks we'd probably packed too much of. The trail was busy, full of families and experienced hikers nodding politely as they passed us. It felt like the safest kind of wilderness, a place where we could experience nature without feeling completely alone. By the time we reached our campsite near a creek, the sun was dipping low. Its warm light reflected off the water. We set up our tents in a loose circle around a fire pit and spent the next hour gathering wood and fumbling with matches. Eventually, we got a fire going, and Ryan broke out the marshmallows. "This is exactly what I needed," Alex said, stretching out by the fire. "No deadlines, no Wi-Fi, just us and the stars." Not long after we'd settled in, I noticed a group of people walking up the trail toward us. They looked rough, clothes worn and dirty, with oversized packs that seemed to sag under the weight. One of them, a man in his 40s with a scruffy beard, raised a hand in greeting. "Evening," he said, his voice gravelly. "Hey," Ryan replied, always the friendly one. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" The group stopped a few feet from our fire. Their eyes darted between us and our campsite. A younger guy, probably in his late 20s, stepped forward. "You guys camping here tonight?" "Yeah," I said. "First time out here?" The younger guy grinned. "First time, huh? Hope you brought the good stuff. Warm clothes, real food. It can get cold out here." Alex squirmed in his seat, clearly uneasy. "We're prepared." The scruffy man leaned closer to the fire, warming his hands. "Nice setup you've got," he said, looking at our gear. "You all alone?" "Out here." Something about the question made my stomach tighten. Yeah," I said hesitantly. "Just us." They hung around for a while, not in any rush to leave. They asked more questions about where we'd parked, how long we were staying, and what kind of gear we had. Ryan, ever the optimist, answered most of them politely. But Alex and I exchanged uneasy looks. There was something off about these people. Their overly friendly smiles, the way their eyes lingered too long on our backpacks. Eventually, they said their goodbyes and wandered back toward their own campsite, which was farther down the trail. As soon as they were out of earshot, Alex spoke up. "Is it just me, or were they kind of weird?" "They were definitely weird," I said. "Why were they so interested in our stuff?" Ryan shrugged. "Maybe they were just being friendly. Not everyone's a serial killer, you know." After dinner, we put out the fire and went back to our tents. I was too wired to sleep, replaying the conversation with the strangers in my head. Their campsite wasn't far, and I couldn't help but feel like they weren't quite done with us. Sometime after midnight, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps through the underbrush. At first I thought it might be an animal, but the rhythm was too deliberate, too human. I held my breath, listening as the footsteps circled our tents. Then came the sound of a zipper being tugged slowly. My heart raced as I realized it wasn't my tent. "Hey," I shouted, my voice cutting through the eerie silence. Who's out there? The sound stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the creek. Then hurried footsteps. Whoever it was bolted back into the woods. "Guys, get up," I shouted, fumbling for my flashlight. Ryan and Alex scrambled out of their tents, flashlights in hand. Alex looked pale, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "What the hell is going on? Why is my tent open?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Someone was out here," I said. "I heard them trying to unzip one of our tents." His face went from confused to terrified in an instant. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What?" Ryan and I moved closer. The zipper on Alex's tent was partly open, just enough for someone to slip a hand, or worse, inside. Alex stumbled back, clutching his flashlight like a weapon. They were trying to get in while I was asleep. The weight of his words hit all of us at once. Someone had been inches from Alex, unzipping his tent while he lay there completely vulnerable. I felt a wave of sickness and panic rise in my chest. "We need to check the campsite," Ryan said. The three of us huddled together, sweeping our flashlights across the dark expanse of trees and grass. The woods felt alive, every rustle and creak made louder by our fear. My flashlight caught movement near the edge of the campsite, but when I whipped it back, there was nothing there. "Did you see that?" I stammered. Ryan shook his head, but his grip on the flashlight tightened. "Let's stay together. We don't know how many of them there are." Alex kept looking at his tent, his breathing uneven. "They were right there," he kept muttering, "right there." We spent the rest of the night sitting around the dying campfire, too scared to go back into our tents. The shadows seemed to grow darker, and the forest felt like it was closing in on us. By the time the sun finally rose, we were exhausted, our nerves completely shut. In the daylight, the campsite looked deceptively normal, but the evidence of the night's events was impossible to ignore. One of Alex's tent zippers had been left partly open, just as we'd seen. Nearby, we found a few of our belongings missing: a flashlight, some snacks, and a water bottle. Small things, but the idea that someone had been bold enough to take them while we were right there made my stomach churn. Ryan pointed to a spot near the edge of the clearing. "Look." We followed his gaze to a dirty, crumpled baseball cap lying in the grass. None of us recognized it. "That wasn't there yesterday," Alex said, holding it up like it was radioactive. "It has to be one of theirs." "Great," I muttered. "What do we do now?" "Pack up and leave," Ryan said firmly. "I'm not sticking around to see if they come back." We packed up as quickly as we could, looking over our shoulders the entire time. When we finally made it to the car, I could finally breathe again. But none of us spoke until we were safely in the car, doors locked and engine running. We reported the incident to the park rangers, who assured us they'd look into it. But as far as I know, nothing ever came of it. Alex broke the silence as we pulled onto the main road. "I don't think I can do this again," he said quietly. I didn't blame him. That night changed everything. Camping used to feel like an adventure, an escape from the world. Now it feels like a risk I'm not sure I'm willing to take again. The thought of someone standing outside our tents, unzipping them while we slept, that's a kind of fear that stays with you these days. I'm a lot more careful about where I camp and who I talk to out in the wild. Where there are no walls or locked doors to protect you, it's not always the animals or whether you need to fear. It's the people you meet along the way. If the stories left you double-checking your tent zippers, smash that like button and share with friends who love a good scare. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another terrifying upload. Got your own camping horror story? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear all the eerie details. Stay safe out there, and remember, the woods have eyes, even when you don't see them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.